Any of you have excitement right now, I caution you to stifle that a little bit. This is The Spirit of Speed 1937, a racing game that came out in the late 90s by Broadsword. What was it? Broadsword Interactive. You probably never heard of them for good reason. This is a racing game, came out around the same time as Grand Prix Legends, and because of the source material, was anticipated highly and sought after, desired, I don't know what you'd call it. Another racing game similar to Grand Prix Legends. This is going to be great, and I think it was anything but great. But one of those games that I had never played up until just last night, and was one that I had seen back then and thought, ooh, this could be really cool, and to try out looking at 1930s Grand Prix cars. What could be more interesting than that? And after playing it, I could tell you probably a lot of things could be more interesting, especially in the way that this game does it. So the basis of the sim game, I think it tried to be a sim, which is mind-blowing, but this is, somewhat of a game that simulates or has content relating to Grand Prix racing as it was in the late 1930s. 1937 Grand Prix season is pretty famous, as it was, I think, the last one before the Second World War, or just a couple before, and it was when you had the Auto Unions and Mercedes-Benz German cars just killing all the competition, maybe literally sometimes on just terrifying circuits all throughout Europe, the great pre-war racing. The real European Grand Prix Championship was only 5 races, and oddly enough, none of the 5 tracks which were raced are in this game at all. But the ones that are not super unrealistic as far as venue in their making. They might be a little out there. The track content, so this is where you might be able to get excited again. We see here we got Avis, the great German highway circuit. We've got Brooklyn's, I think the oldest circuit in the world, potentially, especially at the time, but I think it was the first permanent racing facility built. Donington, still a track we know today, but the 1930s version of that. We've got Montana. This is one I'm not sure is real. However, it could be, and maybe that's the whole point. Monterey, this is a French circuit, famous for some Ken Block videos these days, but has held racing for quite a long time, especially on the road part, the oval, not used anymore. We've got Monza, we've got Pau, the famous circuit for the F2, F3 races that still exists there. Roosevelt Raceway, which is a real circuit as well, that I learned. I thought this was fictional, but actually a real track that was raced in those days. And Tripoli, which is also a place that there were races. Now, those are some exciting venues, but in execution and maybe liberty of design, they're quite different than you might expect. If you take a look in the background of the map of Avis, this is supposed to be a pretty boring circuit, honestly. It's down a 2-lane highway with a loop at either end, and this track's claim to fame is the massive banking at one side of the circuit, and you can see it in the video there. The banking's there, however, the circuit twists and turns as it goes down the highway in quite an unrealistic way. If you look at Monza, you might be saying, okay, this is the oval layout, but it's actually some weird hybridization of the oval. I think this is actually a real layout somewhat, however, not one that the Grand Prix cars, I think, would have raced. Maybe just to spice it up, and I think that's the general idea here. The track was maybe too boring somehow to put in the sim as it would be in real life, so they inserted, basically using half of the oval, the south loop, they put a couple chicanes, which you can kind of see as bumps here, and kept, there's some weird chicanes and things throughout the rest of the circuit too. Very odd. But the tracks are all quite different. which is interesting enough, I guess. But overall, it's a little left to be desired. If we switch over to cars now, another great listing of cars. You can see we've got some Alfa Romeos, and all of these cars look very interesting for the time. You can see how the cars had evolved, only for 20, 30 years with high-speed cars like this, and things are all a little bit all over the place. We've got some really massive cars with high-powered engines, low revving. We also got the Auto Unions, which has this odd rear-engined car. Yeah, obviously way back in the 30s, not something you would see. And then the D. I also got Bonner Special, a couple Bugattis, French cars, a Duesenberg, the Remus, and then the Mercedes-Benz, which were the dominant cars for the series. Miller, which is a little American, basically a short track car. I'm not sure if a Mercedes-Benz and a Miller would have ever raced each other. A British car, the Napier, and the Watson Flyer, which is another American car. So a great roster of cars, but you can maybe tell by the graphics and the cars that are spinning, they're a little bit all over the place. I have found that they drive differently, and most importantly, it seems like max speed is the thing that you want to hopefully have a chance at winning one of these races. But this game overall, is trying to simulate this 1930s era of motorsport. It's a very exciting era of motorsport, and maybe they didn't get the right tracks for it, but they certainly got the right cars for it, and the tracks that they did get or have in the sim are not wrong tracks. There were plenty of non-championship Grand Prix in 1937 and around the era that would have used these circuits. So overall, this is not the complaint with it at all. It definitely comes within the driving. With this sim, you do get a few options for racing, and it's taken me a little while to figure out these menus. They're all over the place, but you get championships, which you can run a full season in your different cars, and from what I can tell, it's not possible to change things like the race length. That kind of comes with the car, I guess. So you'll see in a second, these races can get to the extreme side, but you can change the difficulty. I don't see a reason other than racing on hard, to be honest, and I'll show you that. But you can race a full season. That's going to get you through all the tracks and have a championship and everything. You can race a scenario, which, from what I can tell, they're basically just time trials or another race just set up for you. It's something fun, I guess, to try out the different tracks. In the 90s, they were trying things like this to just give you something to do. The Montana Challenge, aim to beat the Bugatti 35B. So you could try some of these different things that you wanted to. And then you can do a single race. And the single race will let you actually set your grid of driver and car. I don't know where else you can see the drivers, but you can obviously see the cars on the other page. The menus are kind of a mess. You can select your circuit, select your car, pick the number of cars with a max of 10, which is definitely a detriment. Interesting clicking style of menu. And then you can set your laps all the way up to 90 laps, I believe, at any circuit. And if you take a look at this, when we go racing, just remember that you would be able to do a 90-lap race in this. And I cannot imagine anybody ever doing something like that. So I thought it'd be fun to show this sim. I loaded it up last night. It has been a pain to get working. This is not something that's got any documentation out there. I was able to get it going by finding a German decrypted CD patch. I installed DG Voodoo to make it look at least somewhat decent. I was able to get wheel and pedals working with it by basically unplugging everything and just going straight with a G27 wheel and pedals, nothing else. Anything else seemed to crash the game when you tried to calibrate, and it all kind of works and is interesting. I've had probably a little too much fun playing this. Definitely too much fun for how good it is, but it's just one of those quirky things. I'm sure it's actually better now than it was back in 1999 when it came out. It's got terrible reviews. Nobody liked it. It's kind of fallen off. from history, and I'm just interested to make a video in it to show folks what it's all about. So I figured we'll take I want to take the Mercedes-Benz 154 and race that probably around Monza. I just did Monza in the 1955 Grand Prix Legends season, which turned out to be an awesome race around a very exciting track. And so I thought it might be interesting to go there in this game and just take a look at the difference. I'm going to jump up to do a new race. Very odd how you have to set all this up. So we're going to Monza. I'm just going to leave the grid as it is. It looks like we have a Mercedes and an Auto Union in there, so things should be good. I'm going to do 3 laps with a full 10 cars. You are able to practice and qualify, which is kind of cool for a game. Arcade games pretty much never feature qualifying, never mind practice, so it's fun that that's in there. But we're just going to go straight to the race, start at the back of the grid. So here we are on the grid in our Mercedes with very square tires. Checkered flag to start the race. That actually wouldn't have been unrealistic for this time period, but we'll get it off the line and take it quite slowly as we get up the gears, cars smacking into each other in front. So much smoke. We'll see if we can get around those two and head down towards, I guess, the Curva Grande. Barely recognizable, I'll be honest. Come into the chicane. Whoa! One of the cars, I think that's one of those American, maybe the Watson, hitting the chicane, but now flat out in 4th gear around a very banked Curva Grande. Now I can't comment if the circuit, oh my god, in a car flying to the side through the chicane, so the chicane's murdering our opponents. I can't comment if the circuit is accurate to what Monza would have been in the 30s. It was different than the Monza that we know from the 50s and 60s with the high banks. I'm getting smacked off the road by a couple of big British cars. Well, I'm bogging down in 3rd gear. We'll head, I guess we're headed under the oval now and towards the Ascari corner. Just being smacked around quite a bit on our opening lap. Well, and one of those cars had run wide. That might have been the Auto Union. Yellow flags, I guess, in the sim. I think there is even pit stops if you go for a race long enough. You can check your fuel, or your fuel and oil can run out. So now we'll take the hard left as we were heading towards the Parabolica there, and we'll head over to the back straightaway of the large oval. Hook a right here. Just mosey our car around. The physics in this thing are so weird. The car, it doesn't feel like it has physics, first of all. Just turning the wheel, you're sliding around, and suddenly the rear end will lose grip and you'll do a power slide, which goes quicker for a moment. So we're on the oval now with nice Roman pillars to the outside. They dressed up the circuits quite a lot. Here's this weird chicane. We'll see if we can go quickly through it. Get up to 5th gear now to complete the first lap. So coming to the end of lap number 1, or 3-lap mini race here. Remember, you could do 90 laps around this if you wanted to, and I just can't imagine doing that. Let's see though if we can catch these couple of cars in front. Try to just nose the car through. I've found that keeping the throttle down as much as you can is the best way. There's some really tight corners and the cars seem to have quite a lot of grip, but you do lose it after a certain amount and the car will slide and spin out. Very, very odd. Not something that you can feel comfortable racing as we'll try to get into the Lesmos here. Wow, and I do what I was talking about and spin the car out, get back into 1st gear. Through the 2nd Lesmo. Just very, very easy to put the car the wrong way. I will say it's a much easier game with the steering wheel, and sometimes it's slightly enjoyable. I think experiencing the circuits for the first time has been kind of fun. Playing around with some of the different cars has been fun. I've been thinking that doing this, as we're sliding all over the circuit, thinking doing, I don't know, maybe a live stream where we'll try to go through the championship just for fun. That could be a fun time, but this is nothing like a Grand Prix Legends, and I think that's the backlash it got. Grand Prix Legends was not a successful racing game when it came out, and so it wouldn't even been smart for a game company to try to emulate that. And I don't think that's what they were doing here. I think for some reason they thought, I'm stuck in the sand trap there. I think for some reason they thought people wanted this type of game, but they really did not spend their time making it. You know, there's not a lot going on here, and the reason I keep flip-flopping and calling it an arcade game or a sim is because I think it has the features which you would expect in a sim, meaning it's just really the driving. There's not any gimmicky pickups or weapons and all of this, but there's not much of a sim here either. So what you're left with is nothing. You're just driving, and that's why a 90-lap race would be mind-numbing. Keeping them short, running through the different tracks, it's kind of fun to see the corners and see the artwork and things. But after that, what are you looking at here? So that's that. I think that car slammed into the chicane again. See if we can pass one of these cars here. The AI have no concept of you in this. It seems like they just kind of drive their own thing. See if we can slide it up the inside before I get run into. Whoa, I ducked out of the way there. The audio union comes back on and slams into me, but I'm able to go by. Yeah, they wouldn't have been racing like that in the 1930s. Make a left-hand turn and head under the oval. We're on the last lap. Smoke in front of us. There would have been a lot of smoke back in these days. These things burned a lot of oil. Following another car would have meant very bad vision and goggles, but we'll come now to this left-hand turn. I think we're actually going to lap a car here. See if we can cut the track a little bit. Car getting bogged down. Making it on the outside. I think we might be in second position, but I got two cars to the inside. See if we can avoid them going through the chicane. Maybe I did pass them. There's not a lot of ways to see that. Up through fifth gear though, just need to negotiate, I guess what I'll call the oval chicane. No problems there in our Mercedes. Coming through fifth gear, head towards the line to end this little fun race, I guess. And across the line. Race over. So it looks like our compatriot there, or our teammate in the Mercedes 154 won by a few seconds. I think if I didn't spin out and stuff, could have been possible, but if you pick some of the slower cars, there's just no way that you're going to keep up. Overall, this is nothing more than a distraction to spend maybe a couple hours total playing, but it's really interesting to see how different a game or a sim could be. You know, that came out, this one actually came out later. You know, the only positive news I heard about this game, or read in some of the reviews, is the graphics are better. And for default Grand Prix Legends versus default Spirit of Speed, yes, the graphics are a little nicer, but that's about where the compliments end. The tracks are not realistic at all, and the physics are just absolutely terrible. Kind of hard to keep the cars on track at all. Like I said, I might do some of this in maybe a live stream at some point if people are interested, but thought I'd take a little look at some history. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time.